All right. So one thing that it kind of popped up into my head earlier is that like you always hear about these people who try to excuse less than desirable behavior or like actions in their emotions, negative emotions. It's like they try to excuse them and justify them a lot of times by claiming that it's like that it's part of it's how they were brought up or whatever, and they try to blame it on like their life experiences and their childhood. But the thing that gets me with it is that, like, if you can recognize that it affected you and it created some kind of trauma for you as an adult, why can't you, like, take the initiative to change the behavior then? It just doesn't really make sense to me. Like, if you can recognize it when it's happening and you can put the blame on your parents or on your upbringing or whatever, shouldn't you be able to acknowledge it then and change the behavior too? You know, like, I know people that were abused as children and they don't abuse their children because they recognized that that was taking place, and they, didn't want to, they wanted to break that cycle. They didn't want to continue it. Then I know people who were in abusive, abused as children, and they're abusive to their significant other, and yet they'll point the blame and be like, well, I was abused as a kid and that's why I'm like this. You just acknowledged what you were doing. Like, you know what you're doing. So I don't understand, like, stop using it as an excuse and just change the behavior. I don't understand why people can't do that. You might not think that it's fair that you have to experience some of the things that you have to experience in your life, but you made a soul contract before you came here to live this life that you're living. Your soul made that commitment that it was coming here in the body that you're in to live the life you're living, to learn from the experiences that you've had or are going to have or are currently having. Your soul it knew what this life was going to be like, and it chose to be committed to come here and live it. And you might have been put into a family that, just maybe was really negative. Maybe there was a lot of abuse or neglect, or maybe you were super poor and you didn't have jack shit, as a kid growing up. But you might have been brought here for all of that, to learn the lessons and to break those generational curses for that particular ancestral line. You were here knowing, your soul knew before it came here that you were going to live a life of abuse and neglect as a child growing up. Okay? It already knew everything that was going to happen. And it knew it was going to be hard, and it knew it was going to be painful. But knowing that, your soul also knew that there was a reason that you were going to be living that life and experiencing those things. And maybe the reason for it is because you are the one that is supposed to acknowledge that behavior, see it in yourself, and then change the cycle for the future generations, breaking that generational curse. And I just don't understand, like, why it's always an excuse. We make up all these excuses all the time to justify our negative behavior rather than actually making a change to it. And if you can recognize that you have this negative behavior, shouldn't you be able to make that change? I mean, you'd think it'd be a lot easier, because the first key to making a change with anything is actually, recognizing what needs to be changed. And if you can recognize that you have this less than desirable behavior, then all it comes, and you don't want to behave like that anymore, you don't, then it shouldn't really be all that hard to actually make that change. But I think what it comes down to is people don't want to change. They don't want to put in the work because it's work. They're maybe emotionally lazy. And it's just easier to make up an excuse and keep treating people crappy, because that's easier than actually putting in the work to be a better person. It's easier to just keep letting that generational curse continue on in this never-ending cycle than it is to put in the work to break that cycle. And I think that's a lot of what it is people just don't want to put in that work. It's not that they don't care. I do think that most of them probably do care. It's just that they don't want to put in the work. They want it to magically fix itself, and that's just not the way it works. But the problem is that if you were sent here to break those generational curses and to stop that repeating self-sabotaging behavior for yourself, and then you don't do that, then in your next life you come back and you relive the situation all over again. So if you were, if your soul made a contract that you're going to live in this, have this childhood of abuse and neglect, and your soul makes that commitment and signs that contract that you're coming back and you're going to have this painful childhood, but it's because you're meant here to be able to recognize that in yourself as an adult and then make the changes necessary and do the healing and do the work that's necessary in order to break that generational curse. Then if you don't do that and you're not fulfilling that part of your bargain and that part of the deal, then when you come back in the next life, you get to repeat the process all over again. You get to be in another child's body with another family, reliving that abuse and neglect all over again. Your soul lives it all over again, all because you decided that you did not want to do the work that was presented to you that first time around. So there really is no way to get away from it. You're going to keep coming back and reliving the same situation over and over and over and over again until you learn that lesson, whether it's in this life or next life. So, if you find that you are somebody that makes excuses for less than desirable behavior, if you can recognize the behavior, then you can definitely recognize where changes need to be made. And it's up to you to actually make those changes. Like, stop this cycle and, be the inspiration and be the hero for all of those generations that come after you, because they're depending on you to put a stop to it. They're depending on you to heal it. And if you're here and you're hearing this message and you are somebody that makes excuses for your less than desirable behavior and you haven't yet taken the initiative to actually make those changes, now's the time to do it. This message is for you.